Hello everyone, this is Larry Myers. This is my presentation on Module 13, Tort Liability. Tort is an actionable or civil wrong committed against one person by another that is independent of contract. These types of torts can take place due to verbal or written acts, and liability may also result from acts that involve negligence. In this first case, it has to do with a female football player who suffered a major injury. Her parents sued the school district because they said that the school district had failed to warn of possible injury. The parents had signed a permission form in the spring. The girl had taken place in summer conditioning. She had also taken place in practices early on. She had done fine. But in one of the scrimmages in the fall, she got injured, and her parents eventually sued the school district. The court ruled that the board had no duty to warn of possible injury when playing a high school varsity sport such as football. It's kind of maybe one of the common sense ideas that there's always going to be a possibility, and the school district had the parents sign a permission form in the spring, but it really had no bearing on the case. The first thing that our school district would do if this happened would be to review its current policies and continue to have players and parents go through the protocol that we take them through, which is to make sure parents and players are made aware of all the risks involved. They watch a concussion video. They watch and review information about heat stroke. There's several things from the National Federation and the state of Kansas that we go through with football players before they're even allowed to practice. With that being said, there's still a lot of things that can happen, and football is a high-risk sport, and most people understand that there is a possibility of injuries. And a lot of times, even though there's a lot of injuries and a lot of severe injuries and even fatal injuries, a lot of times school districts are not held liable for those things. One of the things that as ethically that we should do is make sure that principals and athletic directors review with coaches all the things that procedures and information that they should share with parents and players before the sport even starts. In the second case, Spears versus Jefferson Parish School Board, this occurred in 1994. This is a case of libel where one of the PE teachers was trying to keep the students to keep them in line and managing their behavior. One of the kindergarten students was told that one of the students had hanged himself in the closet. The student even viewed the student that was acting and saw that he was laying on the ground. Eventually, the student was determined to have suffered psychological trauma. The parents sued the school district, and the court ruled in favor of the plaintiff for over $100,000. What our school district would probably do immediately is terminate the PE teacher, or at least discuss not renewing his contract. This was definitely something that, even though it probably was something that the teacher thought was just a simple little joke or prank, it turned out that it caused some issues with the child. One of the things that we'd probably do proactively is review this type of information. You're not going to be able to have the foresight for everything, but at least having a review of things that could happen with teachers and staff would be a good idea. Another thing that you should do, just the idea of ethical behavior as a representative of the school. And as a teacher, you should be aware of the legal ramifications of negligence. All staff members, paras, teachers, all administrators should use common sense, give clear instructions. In this case, there were two teachers actually that were in the gymnasium at the same time. One of them probably should have used a little common sense, and this probably could have been avoided. This third case is Mitchell versus Cedar Rapids Community School District. This happened in 2013. A girl with an IEP left school unsupervised before the bell rang at the end of the day. Later, she was sexually assaulted away from the school. And the court held that the school district was negligent because the school failed to adequately supervise the student. There was a para assigned to her. There was no notification of the parent to the parents when the girl had left school with the unauthorized absence, and there was sort of a total breakdown of supervision. So the court ruled in favor of the plaintiff. What our school would do is review all procedures involving attendance, supervision, monitoring of SPED students. We have on a daily basis almost reminders from our attendance office about turning in attendance. When we have fire drills anymore, we make sure all students are accounted for. As a proactive measure, we would discuss and remind all staff members about supervision of students, especially students with IEPs and especially students that have paras assigned to them. Even though this occurred off campus, the school district was still responsible for the supervision of the students. Principals and school district leaders should discuss the responsibilities of all staff members. When you see a student leaving the building or outside the building, it's probably a good idea to check with the student, check with their immediate supervisor or their teacher, and find out what's going on. It'd probably be a good idea ethically to report that information to the office or the principal or the nearest supervisor if possible. This case is Simonetti versus School District of Philadelphia. This is an older case, but what happened, and this is one that's come up quite a bit in a lot of the things that I looked at. Pennsylvania Supreme Court originally held that the momentary absence by one of its teachers did show negligence. What had happened was the teacher was standing at the door, watching some students come in from the outside. Some students that she had kept in at recess were inside. When she was out near the door watching the students come in, one of the students tripped and fell that was in the classroom, and another student got a pencil that was placed in their eye. Again, the original decision was for the plaintiff, but eventually an appellate court ruled that the action of the student did not fall under supervisory duties of the teacher. What they ruled was that these things like this are things that you can't plan for, and in this case, the teacher was supervising both the students coming in and the students in the room, and this action was the decision that a student made, and they were kind of messing around, and when those decisions are made on an impulse by a student, those were ruled to not be covered by negligence or supervision. What our school would probably do immediately is review the supervisory duties, making sure that if you are going to have to leave your room, talk to another teacher, have a colleague or another adult nearby if they can just help supervise either the students coming in or the students in the room. Discuss safety procedures with students, remind staff, students, and parents of dangers involving hallway procedures. One of the things that we're doing this year is putting up posters in our middle school to remind students and remind teachers of what appropriate and proper behavior is in the hallways in the classrooms. One of the duties of the principals for ethical behavior is to discuss with teachers at the beginning of the year what's expected, especially with new teachers, work with other teachers, share duties, share responsibilities. If one of you has to use the restroom, it'd be a good idea for somebody to be available to watch your classroom. If you get called to the office or for a phone call, it's always a very good idea to have another adult nearby or another adult to help you if you need assistance with supervision. This last case is CA as a student, a minor student, so they're not identified, versus William Hart Union High School District. This occurred in 2012. This was a case of negligence that was ruled in favor of the plaintiff. The plaintiff said that the school district was negligent in hiring a known child abuser. Complaint also contended the school district knew the guidance counselor had engaged in misconduct with minors in the past, and in the same school district. So there was the court ruled that the school was negligent. The district was negligent, and they were determined to have to pay the costs. The immediate reaction would be termination of the guidance counselor. It's kind of surprising in this time that we live in that someone like that would have been able to be hired through the filtering process. Review of the human resources with the director and staff members. Check current employees' backgrounds. Maybe there's other teachers or counselors or school social workers that are in this district that have similar backgrounds. One of the things that school could do as a proactive measure is to implement background checks for all new employees. Hiring practices should be reviewed. The past misconduct needs to be discussed. An investigation should take place to review what persons knew about the past misconduct, or did it just fall through the cracks? Was anyone aware? Someone other than the guidance counselor should probably be held accountable for this decision in this case. All review of all ethical practices and hiring and all just ethical basic practices with contacts with students should take place on a yearly basis. This is my presentation on tort liability. Thank you.